So they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so I thought, since I only have about 12 minutes with you today, I'd at least start with the first 10 seconds and get about 10,000 words out of the way. So while you're trying to figure out which one is me, I should just remind you again that I'm a native Memphian. And I chose to come home. And when I chose to come home, I learned something startling about my hometown. I learned that since 2000, the year that I graduated from college, Memphis's population was on a steady decline. Yet, by 2050, 70% of the world's population will be living in cities. So why is this important? Well, according to world-renowned urbanist Richard Florida, cities are the key economic and social organizing unit of our time, bringing together people, jobs, and all of the necessary inputs for economic growth. So the question is not, will Memphis be a city in the future, but it's who will want to live in it. So I guess I should pause here and say that for those of you that are attending because you thought this was going to be a complicated talk about a mathematical equation, let me apologize. I'm a government major from a liberal arts college with an MBA in marketing, so that's completely made up. But what could be true, and I want you guys to think about this, is that X could equal the people of Memphis. But I'll come back to that later on in the talk. The reason why I'm here, though, is to talk about the future of Memphis, the NeXt Memphis. So close your eyes for a moment and imagine with me the Memphis of the future. Go ahead, close them. For those of you already asleep, that's fine. Close them. Every zip code that we fly over is socioeconomically and racially diverse. The streets and sidewalks are immaculately clean, replete with bike lanes and perfectly manicured greenery. And our schools will have fewer than we have today, but most of them are in the top 25% of the state. And every single one of our elementary schools is a math and science academy. And those old school buildings, some of them are community innovation centers, some of them are fresh food markets, and some of them are even business co-work spaces for the community. We have a light rail system that connects Fraser to downtown and downtown to Binghamton and Binghamton to East Memphis. And in record year-over-year numbers, tourists are still visiting our iconic Beale Street, Graceland, and the National Civil Rights Museum. Soulsville, Stax, and Sun Studios are the home of music prodigies in R&B, soul, and even a genre of music that has not even been created. And poverty has been cut in half. Cut in half. And unemployment is virtually non-existent. You've been hypnotized. Okay, you can open your eyes. But that is our North Star. That should be the Memphis of the future. And I just want to talk to you today about 3 or 4 ways that I think we can get there. So first, we've got community assets that we need to be building around with a sense of adaptive creativity and innovation. We've got wonderful things, defining elements in our community. The riverfront, Shelby Farms Park, home affordability. We should be building around these assets. We also have cultural tourism as well. And we've got great examples of building around or building in our current environment, because we shouldn't always think about outside of the box or building new boxes, but let's think inside the box and above the box. The Tennessee Brewery, for example, soon to be a residential apartment complex. The Hotel Chiska, It was a place where Elvis Presley broadcast his first record. Now it's one of the booming and thriving living spaces in our community. And even the University of Memphis Law School, once a historic post office. So we've got great examples of doing this already. We just need to do more, because when we do, we'll keep an eye toward our heritage, but we'll also be looking toward the future, and we'll create a cool that both the young and old alike will enjoy. The second area, empowering our young talent. So we've got to continue to do a better job of bringing and attracting young, talented professionals to Memphis, to our urban fabric, and weaving them in. And we should be recruiting our homegrown talent as we identify them in high school, and recruiting them back home in high school, even though they haven't left yet. And it's okay to ship them away, but we shouldn't ship them away never to be seen again. But we should be encouraging them to come back, take their learnings, take their knowledge, and apply that in our community. Because the odds are the next FedEx, the next AutoZone, the next Holiday Inn, it will probably come from our sons and daughters and their hearts and minds. And the age demographic that I'm thinking about are those folks that are born after 1980, and let's call it 1978 so your present company can be included. But we've got, and we know that there's certain things that this generation enjoys. Walkability, transit connections, a place to just enjoy and hang out with friends, cool stuff, hangouts. And Memphis has that environment already. So the question is not how do we bring it, it's how do we make sure that we're preparing it for the next generation. And yes, it's one thing to attract this talent, but we also need to make sure that we are empowering the talent. And I think there are three simple ways. First, we've got to make sure that we're promoting not on tenure, but on that talent. It's okay to have a 25-year-old vice president. Number two, we should be electing the competent and not the known names. And number three, we've got to make sure that we let the kids at the kids' table make decisions. And I want to remind you guys, Thomas Jefferson was 33 when he was the father of the Declaration of Independence. Martin Luther King was in his late 20s when he led the civil rights movement. And John F. Kennedy was 43 when he was elected president of the United States of America. So look, change is not led by old folk. It's going to come. And we just have to be prepared for what this generation will bring. The third point, we need to be building our core city for an intentional sense of equality. So what do I mean? Look, our core city has got to be for everyone. So when we think about developments, we think about attractions and venues, we've got to make sure that we're doing so with a mind toward who's developing them, who's going to have access to them, and who's going to actually use them. And I'm not suggesting that we build with an intentional eye for diversity, but what I'm suggesting is that if we have multiple voices at the table, we have authentic engagement processes, I think we'll have an inherent diversity with the projects that we bring to our core. So those are the core three elements, but I think this is the secret sauce. This is the magic. Now, we all know that a bad attitude is contagious. That's me on the left, and my best friend on the right. But we've got to somehow reverse this negativity that we have in our community. And when I think about this, I'm torn because I think about my grandmother. And I think about the conversations that I had with her in rural Mississippi, walking through her garden, talking with her about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be and the future that she had in her mind for me. And she had a sense of optimism, but there was also a skepticism in the way she would talk about the future. And what I'm really getting at here is that, look, my grandmother was only a generation removed from the institution of slavery and segregation, and it's real. And I believe that that segregation and that slavery and that institution is still in our fabric. It's only a handful of generations away. And you know what? The reality is it's probably going to take another half a generation for us to completely cleanse ourselves of that. But that's the long view, so it's going to take time. But there are some things that we can do now. One, I think it starts with the media. At 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., lead with a good story. 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., we've got to start with positivity. Number two, we need to start stretching the good that we have. Memphis isn't so bad. And let's make that good, let's make us believe that that good is good until it's great. And when it's great, let's stretch it and make it amazing. But we've got to boast a little bit because I really do think that we can get there. So if we do these three things, I think we'll be on our way to creating the future. And along the way, we'll be improving education delivery, we'll be creating diverse job opportunities, we'll be eradicating poverty, and we'll be positioning families for generational wealth creation. And to me, the most important is positioning families for generational wealth creation. Look, I know I look caramel, but this is a chocolate city. And we've got to make sure that we can empower our majority population, the black population, and make them have a greater sense of ownership as we build for the future. And note two curious omissions. First, money. This is about mindset. The money shouldn't drive the strategy for us to get here. We'll need it, but right now we need to focus on mentality. And here's the second. I didn't give a prescription for education. You know why? Our children aren't the problem. They can do it. And we've got the systems in place now to be successful. It starts with the adults. And we've got to give them a clearer vision for the future because I know that they will deliver. So we do all of this, and some of you are looking at me like, boy, you're idealistic. Yeah, that sounds great. But I think it's possible because you know what? There was a time when we didn't think we would break the 4-minute mile barrier. And you know my grandmother that I showed you guys a picture of? She didn't think she'd see a black president. She did. We can do it. We can do it. So let me leave you with this. We have the Memphis Grizzlies, but so do 29 other cities have an NBA franchise. We've got a riverfront, but there are probably a handful of other cities that could say what? They've got a riverfront too. We've got an amazing museum culture, but there are the Smithsonian and other places across the country that could probably say the same thing. And we actually are the cradle of music, multiple genres, but I know for a fact that other cities boastfully make that same claim. So how is Memphis any different? What's different about us? Remember the made-up formula? I think it's the X. The X is this little guy. It's our future. It's their positive mentality. It's their attitude. And I believe that together, if we can change mentality, we can work on those three things that I talked about, we can get there. We will have the urban landscape of the future that people will want to live in. It is possible. Thank you.